Hello everyone. So in our previous video we had seen about the Battle of Plassey and Battle of Buxar and how the English East India Company gained the Diwani right after Treaty of Allahabad, which happened in 1765. Okay, so after that they had Diwani right over Bengal, Bihar and Odisha, and they politically dominated that land. But from very beginning they had their motive in place. They wanted to exploit India, but they did justification of their rule on the concept of the white man's burden. They treated themselves as white men who has this responsibility to civilize the natives of their colonies. As you can see in the figure, the natives have slavery, vices, brutality, and the white man has this burden to take them towards civilization. So this painting tells us all. Okay, but the real motive was something else. As I told you, the Treaty of Allahabad happened in 1765, and in 1767 only they will set up a body. They will set up a body called Survey of India. It was set up in 1767 to help consolidate the territory of British India Company. To help consolidate the territory of British East India Company. So basically, they found which places have resources, where the resources are distributed. And once that was found, they devised methods to exploit those resources so that the riches of this country, the riches or the resources of this country could be looted and taken back to Europe or Britain. So these are the paintings of British era or the East India Company rule. Here you can see they are surveying the land. Here also they are surveying the land, making measurements. Here also they are looking at some plain so that they could do some agriculture or something and collect taxes from people. So the survey of resources are important to extract or exploit that land. So their motive was very clear. They were not here to do any welfare or to civilize or to do anything. We were already civilized. Okay, they were here to exploit. Now, two things are also important. During the time they came to India, they found there is disunity among Indians. There is lack of nationalism feeling. The feeling of nationalism was totally absent. The country was divided into Bengal, Awadh, Hyderabad and Marathas and Mysore and so on. And that is why it was a centrifugal force. It was very easy to, divide and rule these people. So that is what they did. So there was a philosophy through which they legitimized their rule on India. John Stuart Mill basically gave his philosophy of utilitarianism. Mill applied utilitarianism and the theory of progress to justify British rule in India. What is utilitarianism? The greatest good of greatest number is the thing which should focus upon. He wrote, Indians would progress and the Indians would be able to have more happiness under British rule than when they were governed by the native kings. Why? Because India was always ruled by despots. The native kings of India were always despots who had nothing to do with the people or people's welfare. They were only concerned with their luxury and their whims and fancies. So they ruled the country through their whims and fancies, not through the welfare motive of the people. But we are focusing upon the welfare motive of the people. So the second assumption was the British rule was good for the Indian people. Okay. Now these two assumptions were refuted subsequently by the Indian reformers. Okay. Now through these reformers, initial religious, social and political reformers, the nationalism spirit will develop. India will bind into a nation. India will become a nation and then the national movement will start. Now here the role of Dayanand Saraswati, Swami Vivekananda is important, and equally important is the role of Dadabhai Naoroji, who wrote this book in 1901, Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. Okay, the defeat at the hands of foreign power led Indian intellectuals to retrospect. Now the British legitimized their rule by two assumptions. India was always ruled by despots and the British rule was good for Indian people. To refute British assumptions, they started, number one, finding glories in India's past. For example, Dayanand Saraswati said, go back to Vedas. R.D. Bhandarkar, he was a historian. He concept of Ashoka and Golden Rule during the Gupta period. Swami Vivekananda basically show the world the teaching of Upanishad, the teachings of Upanishad and Vedanta. Okay, number two, they strive to change the evils of the society like Radha Ramohan Roy, Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar, Jyotiba Phule, and so on. Number three, uncover the British exploitation and drain of wealth that was done by Dadabhai Naoroji, R.C. Dutt, and G. Subramaniam Iyer. They were critique of British economic policies. Okay, now this will create ground for a wider national movement. Now this will instill faith and pride in India or India's past. Also, it will bind together people because of social evil, they will not able to come together, but when the social evil will go, different section of society will come forward in the national movement. Okay, and they will realize that British East India Company rule or British rule is exploitative. Okay, they highlighted universalism of Vedic and Upanishadic teachings. Ashoka was seen as an example of paternal ruler who was concerned about the welfare of his subjects. Lichavi Vaishali had the first republican experiment. So this was also, presented in front of the European, so that their assumption that India was always ruled by despots will be proven wrong. Gupta period was considered as golden period of Indian history. Now Dayanand Saraswati, he founded the Arya Samaj in 1875. He gave the famous slogan, back to the Vedas. Denouncing the idolatry and ritualistic worship, he worked towards reviving the Vedic ideologies. He also wrote a book, Satyarth Prakash. Another famous slogan which was given by him was India for Indians. So he basically thought that Indian religion or the Hindu religion has degraded, and this degradation is happening because we are not sticking to the teachings of Vedas. Okay, Veda has no idolatry and no ritualistic worship. That is why he said go back to Vedas and wrote Satyarth Prakash in India for Indians, and back to Vedas was his slogan. He started DAV school, and his organization, the organization he founded, Arya Samaj, will later start DAV schools all over the country. Then Swami Vivekananda, he was the person who will introduce the West to the Advaita and Vedantic philosophies. Okay, through his famous speech at Parliament of Religion at Chicago in 1893. He was a disciple of Ramakrishna Paramhans. He founded Ramakrishna Mission in 1890. Now come to social reform, which was a big challenge during those days. Many intellectuals thought that because our society is degraded in superstition and myths, that is why we are not able to progress and become a country like Europe. So Raja Ramohan Roy, he went to Europe for the first time as ambassador of Akbar II. So Akbar II only gave him the title of Raja before going to England. Now he is considered as the father of Indian Renaissance. He is considered as the father of Indian Renaissance and is also called the father of modern India. Whereas Tilak was called the father of Indian unrest and also the maker of modern India by Gandhiji. He started something called Atmiya Sabha initially. Later he founded Brahmo Sabha, which eventually became Brahmo Samaj. In collaboration with David Hare, he set up Hindu College at Calcutta and he published a journal called Samvad Kaumidi. Then his most popular efforts were efforts to ban the practice of sati, which was prevalent during those times. Now William Bentinck was the first Governor General of India. He enacted the Bengal Sati Regulation Act in 1829, declaring the practice of burning or burying alive of Hindu widows, both voluntary or involuntary, to be punishable by the criminal code. He also did efforts to suppress the female infanticide and to suppress the human sacrifice. Now under him only, William Sleeman was given the responsibility to suppress the practice of thuggy, which was prevalent in central and western India. So William Sleeman is credited for the end or suppression of thuggy, which was practiced in central India. Then there is also one more concept which I want to discuss here only, the concept of indentured labor. So what is that basically? Indian Slavery Act was passed in 1843. So slavery was abolished in a way. But there was something similar to slavery which started. That was called indentured system. The Indian indentured system was a system of indentured servitude by which more than 1 million Indians were transported to labor in European colonies as a substitute for slave labor. Following the abolition of slave trade in early 19th century, the system expanded after the abolition of slavery. Now the British India indentureship lasted till 1920s. This resulted in the development of a large Indian diaspora across the world, like in the Caribbean, in Fiji, Mauritius, etc. Okay. On every 9th of January, we celebrate Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. Okay. To celebrate our diaspora or their achievement, and that is done on 9th of January because on 9th of January 1915 Gandhiji returned to India. He was also in a way outside India and NRI, and then he came on 9th of January. That is why we celebrate Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. So here only I would like to discuss Lord Dalhousie also. He is considered by some historians as the maker of modern India. But in the options, if you will have all the Europeans, then only mark him. Otherwise, if in the options you have Tilak, then Tilak will be the correct answer because he was called the maker of modern India by Gandhiji. Okay. Now, Lord Dalhousie introduced railways in 1853 from Mumbai to Thane. Okay, the first railway line was from Mumbai to Thane. He also introduced the first telegraph line from Calcutta to Agra in the same year. And this is going to help them during the revolt of 1857. He also introduced uniform postal stamp for the first time, okay, at a uniform rate. In 1854, Charles Woods prepared a dispatch on education system in India. Further, he established Public Works Department, PWD department. Okay, so previous to that, the bridges, the roads were built by military. Now there will be a separate department for this. Simla was made the permanent headquarters of the army. Then this one is quite important. In 1857 revolt, we will see this. Dalhousie shifted the headquarters of Bengal artilleries from Calcutta to Meerut. And the revolt of 1857 will start from Meerut only. Now, the first railway line was from Mumbai to Thane in 53. Wood's dispatch is also called as Magna Carta of English education system in India. But he was infamous for doctrine of lapse. Okay, and which was the first state brought under doctrine of lapse? It was Satara. Okay, and then in the next video we are going to see the contradictions in Indian society. First we will take up the women issue. Then we will take up the Dalit issue. In women issue, we are going to discuss Raja Ram Mohan Roy, which I think we did, and Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar Vishnu Sastri Pandit, Karshondas Munji, Virsalingam Pantulu, Didi Karve, Pandita Ramabai, Tarabai Sindhe, Savitribai Phule, Kamladevi Chattopadhyay. For Dalit, we are going to see Chennai Revolt, Jyotiba Phule, Narayan Guru, E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar, B.R. Ambedkar, Gandhiji, and Dalit Panther and Gal Omvit. So that we are going to see in our next video. So thank you, thanks for watching.